Welcome to the Travel and Beyond podcast with me, Daisy Ayres. Come with me on this incredible journey as I share my experience of immigrating from the UK to Australia and everything life throws at me in between. Join me for candid conversations, unfiltered advice, and moments of laughter as we shine a light on the highs and lows of this adventure. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel and Beyond podcast. And today's episode, I've been so excited to record because I've got Joanne on from Skye Pet Travel. So you guys will know I mentioned Skye Pet Travel a few episodes ago, saying that we are bringing Pepper over by using this service. And I've been speaking to Joanne on and off for a few months now, actually, trying to get her on because I just love this business. I really think it's such a cool business idea. I really obviously believe in it because I'm using it. And I wanted to get Joanne on to tell us all about it. And obviously, hopefully, there might be some people listening that would benefit from this service as well. So, Joanne, if you want to just give a quick introduction to who you are and what Skye Pet Travel is.
Hi Daisy, thanks for having me. So I'm Joanna, founder of Skye Pet Travel. We are a pet travel company based in Australia. So we are essentially a pay per seat charter service for pet owners to have a different option to fly their pets in cabin instead of the traditional method of cargo. And we concentrate on flights in and out of Australia and New Zealand.
Thank you. And I think that's how I mainly came across you guys, because when we started the process a year ago and we knew we wanted to bring our pet with us, we then learned that obviously all pets have to go in cargo, and it is just a horrible, horrible thought. Pepper's she's just spoiled, to be honest. She's really spoiled, but she's good with humans. She doesn't really like dogs, and I just picture her being so scared under there. And it was a friend of mine said they had, seen your company on Facebook, have a look into them. And I think for so many people, it's probably just changed their whole immigration process of having that peace of mind that their pet doesn't have to go in the cargo and can go in the cabin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, we'll get into it later into the conversation of why I started, but it is such a stressful part of moving overseas is how they're going to travel, how they're going to get there, and just to have an alternative option. I think it's so important, and there's just so many different reasons why we might not want the pets to travel cargo or they can't. There's not options for snub-nosed breeds, and pets may have various diseases or illnesses that they just can't. That a lot of airlines just refuse to take them because there's too many risks. So, some pet owners are just left with actually no options, and they have to really think about if they're going to be able to move or not, because there's no other option out there. So it really is bringing a different service to those who need it, essentially.
Yeah, and obviously most people can't afford to charter a private jet on their
That's
own.
exactly right.
There's a lot of people, from the start, Aaron said, I'm only going if Pepper's coming. It was, non-negotiable. She absolutely has to come. So just a little bit about you for background, because obviously you're from the UK. We can tell by your accent.
Yeah.
How long have you lived in Australia for?
So Liam, my husband, and we originally came over here 11 years ago. So it'll be 11 years in about 2 weeks' time, actually. So we came. So we're both from Devon. We came here on working holiday visas. So originally we just planned to sort of travel Australia, New Zealand, and be here sort of for the 2 years that we could be here for. At the end of those 2 years, we realised that we really loved it here and wanted to stay. So we did have to move back to the UK for a little while we processed our visas. So we came into Australia on 189.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the 189 is the migrant visa. where you just get permanent residency due to the trade that you're in. In my husband's case, it was electrician. So while we were going through that process, you'll know you're going through it now. It can be time consuming. So having all the tests and the IELTS and all of that, we moved to New Zealand. So we were actually in New Zealand we lived there for about 10 months. So while we were started all the process, we were there and
Yeah.
went through all the hoops, and then we got permanent residency, and that the permanent residency came through in 2016, and then we moved back to Australia. So it was a few years sort of on and off traveling and coming back and forth, before we got that. And we lived in quite a few places in Australia. We've lived in Darwin, Queensland, we lived in Sydney for a little while, Adelaide, and then we settled in Perth for about 5 years. Then we ended up in the Pilbara for a couple of years, and in 2020, that's when we got our citizenship. So we're both Australian citizens now as well. So we just got the dual British and Australian citizenship. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. Can't quite believe it's been 11 years, but it just flies by, and before you know it, you're sort of.
Do you ever miss the UK?
Yes, we do. I think the one thing about being an expat, and there's a Facebook group called Ping Pong Poms. I don't know if you're aware of it, but essentially it's just a lot of people move over here, and then you're kind of in this zone, I believe, of never really feeling 100% settled. So there's aspects of England, obviously you miss, but then the lifestyle in Australia is lovely for us. So really, it just boils down to family. I think. I think if our family could be over here, then we would be really 100% happy. But we really love the lifestyle over here, and it's good for the dogs and everything. So we're pretty settled, but it's always nice to have family over here, and then go back to England for the home comforts and takeaways, and things are just not the same. Have some fish and chips and things like that. So it's I think when you're an expat, it's just always you're always a little bit torn.
I think that would be the main thing for us. I don't think we'll miss actually lifestyle in England and living in England with family and friends, but it's so easy to keep in contact with people nowadays, isn't it? I know it's not the same as typically being there, and you probably feel like you miss out maybe on some things when there's weddings, and things like that. But I don't think we'll look back in terms of the quality of life that we're going in Australia.
Yeah. And look, have no regrets. It's not permanent, nothing is permanent. So whether you move over here and decide it's not for you, you can always move back. It's not, especially like when you've got to the point that like we've got with dual citizenship, it's makes it for a little bit simpler, apart from moving the dogs, but we'll get into that.
Right, so let's go into a bit more detail about Skye Pet Travel. So what made you start the business?
Okay, so it was going back to late 2021. My husband Liam and I, we were living up in the Pilbara at the time. So it was during, sort of when COVID, there was a lot of restrictions. There was a lot of restrictions in Australia, and certainly in Western Australia, they were very strict with in and out travel. So you couldn't, there was a period of time where you couldn't, say, fly to England without coming back and then having to go into hotel quarantine, and they wouldn't let you do that if you weren't of a certain criteria and all of that. So it felt like it was ongoing for quite a while, and obviously at that point, end of 2021, we'd been in that midst of it for about 18 months at that point. So we were looking at moving back to the UK because we thought, okay, look, is this going to be an ongoing thing? We don't want be away from our families anymore, and we just want to get back in. You don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know what's going to be happening in the future. So I started looking at ways that we could get the dogs back, and I'd actually personally never gone through the pet travel process before, apart from, as I said, Rue, one of our youngest dog. He came as a puppy from Queensland. I certainly didn't enjoy that experience. I thought it was very stressful for him, and I didn't like when he came. He was on the flight. It just seemed a very long time. I mean, even coming from Queensland, he was put in his crate, dropped off at the airport quite a few hours before by the breeder, and then he had a 5-hour flight over here. And then when they landed, we didn't get him for about 2.5 hours after he landed. So then, he's a 8-week-old puppy at this point. And then I remember when he came around the corner and he was like really screaming, howling, and I just never really forget that sound. And I just felt so guilty in that moment for having put him through that experience, and just really wish that there could have been something better for him. And I guess that was also part of me not really knowing anything about that industry, and never had gone through anything like that before. I just thought, that's just the only options, and Queensland is so far from Perth, so it wasn't like it was easy for us to just to go and drive and get him. So it wasn't really a thought in my in my mind. So anyway, then fast forward, so we actually got him in 2020. So then fast forward to end of 2021, and we started looking into getting the dogs back, and I just knew straight away like cargo was never going to be an option, and also the other two are rescues, and I just didn't want them to go through anything traumatic. The youngest is also a very nervous dog, and I just know that they just wouldn't cope in that environment. That's just my dogs. I mean, there are a lot of dogs out there who would just go in a crate and the journey would be smooth sailing, and there's no worries at all. But I think your own dogs, don't you? And I just know that it would be traumatic for them. It would be traumatic for me, and I would just rather not move than put them through that. So when I was looking into it, there was no other options. There was nothing out there. I looked into boats. Where could I get? What? Yeah. What is the nearest country I could get to, and then drive the rest of the way to Europe? I was like, if we can just get to Singapore, then I could surely get a train or a drive or something, like stupid things. I went down a very deep hole of looking into any way that I could get them there that wouldn't cause them to, I guess, one, be away from me from the journey, like as part of the journey, and then two, to keep it as less traumatic as possible. So I started looking into chartering private jets. I know there's quite a few people who've looked into that before, and then you suddenly realise, okay, it's quite expensive. So, and then you're brought back down a peg or two straight away when you realise that, okay, right, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not feasible. Then I started putting out the idea of, okay, on a few expat groups, does anyone want to, I've had a quote for this private jet. Does anyone want to share the costs, and we'll go together? But even at that point, you're still talking at a very high cost, and especially when we've got 3 dogs. So there was a lot of people interested though. So on a lot of the expat groups, I got into conversations with a lot of people who said, it would be really great if there was a cabin option. There's no other options but cargo. And then I started to learn about the difficulties with snub-nosed breeds. So the routes that they have to go on, if it's, a lot of airlines don't accept them anymore. So the options are really limited. I mean, I think you mentioned, on your previous podcast about the options from the UK at the moment are, via LA and then on to Melbourne from there, and it's quite a long journey. They've got a kennel part way through their journey, and that in itself, can cause quite a lot of stress on the animals. So, and then also the aspect of, I guess there's quite a few points why we created it in the end. I learned about the difficulties with all the snub-nosed breeds. I guess generally just those people who just don't want to put their pets in cargo and just want a different option for them. There's also the pets that have diseases or illnesses that can completely stop them from flying. A lot of airlines actually completely refuse them because if they've got something heart disease or something, and not necessarily that something that is end of life or anything like that, it's just that it's too complicated and too risky to fly them via cargo. So again, they don't have any other option. So while I was going through the process of finding all of this out, I thought, okay, well, we need to do something about this. There needs to be something. We need to have an alternative option. So then, cut that long story short, after a few months of sort of going back and forth with a few people, I created Skye Pet Travel on the basis of we would charter the private jet as a company, and then we would sell the seats as pay per seat, rather than someone having to charter the jet themselves and then having that cost borne by them. The cost is spread out with a company that organizes it, and then it just becomes that service. So that's sort of how it came about, why we started in the first place. So that's it.
I love it. It's so good that you've looked into everything, and it is hard. And what I keep thinking as well is, if we were to fly Pepper via the LA route, that's traumatizing in itself. But then she has to go into quarantine for 30 days. So it's not like she's going through that experience and it's 48 hours, let's say, and then she's reunited with us.
Yeah.
That thing of, then they go through that traumatizing experience. Then they go to somewhere that they've never been before. They don't know anyone there.
Yeah.
And that part of it as well, I think, adds to the thing of like, oh my God, I really don't want to put her through that. It seems cruel. So I think, good for you for looking into everything and realizing such a gap in the market. As I say, I've kind of been following for about a year now, and I think you hadn't done your first flight when I first started following you. And then when I saw you did your first flight, I was so happy to see that you've done your first flight, because it must have been a relief for you to know that, okay, this is actually going to work, and it is a service that we can provide to people that will benefit them so much. So when was your first flight? It was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the first flight took off in June 2023. Yeah. So we flew from London to Melbourne. We stopped in Dubai and the Maldives on the way, and we did some passengers got off in Dubai, so we flew some passengers London to Dubai with their pets, and then some got on, and then we flew on to Melbourne. We had fewer pets coming into Melbourne on that flight than we did on our second flight. We had 4 dogs getting off in Melbourne in June, and then the next day we flew Melbourne, Dubai. We actually went by Paris as well, and then to London. So we did drop-offs and pickups in those locations as well. So we were full on the way back that time.
Were you on the flight?
Did you go on? Yeah. So I actually I actually fly on all the flights. So I fly the routes back to back as well. So we'll
Wow.
fly London to Melbourne. Of course, drop off all those passengers and pets, and then the next day we fly back from Melbourne to London. So I'm on both routes, and I fly on the flights because I have chaperone pets with me. So again, that's just another a service I wanted to offer as an alternative, to just flying with your pet. It's
Mm.
as
So
you
I'm
said, it's
interested to know, what is the flight actually like? Because I've seen the photos and you
mm,
can kind of think what it would be like, but what's it like?
yeah. So it is special. I mean, it's unlike um I mean, of course, for most people, flying privately is not the norm, and it certainly was never for me. I didn't even fly business class to and from Australia. So when I was experiencing this, it's a completely different way of travel. We fly from private terminals from London, so the whole experience right from the get-go is completely different. So you're not going through any commercial airports, you're not going through the custom queues or anything like that. So there's no stress for the
Yeah,
pets on that side of things either. So you just get to the private terminal, you go into the lounge, all the passengers and the dogs can mingle if they want to. And then we just all usually the plane is just parked right outside the lounge, so you just go through the doors on the other side, and then you just walk onto the plane, so it's nice and easy. Usually there's a bit of hype in the lounge where all the dogs are really excited, and it can be a little bit noisy where they're all hyper and everything. But it's quite strange when you actually get on the aircraft and all the dogs are in their little spaces, and they're with they're either with their owners or they're with the chaperones. It's almost just like they know, right, okay, we're going to be here for a while, we're just going to settle in now. So they get into their spots and then they just lay down. And I'm not just saying this, a lot of them just are so chilled out when we take off. It's like they don't even know
yeah,
what's happening. So they a lot of them just take it in their stride, really, and they just sit with us. And then by the time we're up and we've been in the air 15 minutes, a lot of them are already asleep. So it's just, I think, the calmness of the cabin. We only have up to 10 passengers with their pets as well, so it's generally quite a quiet cabin.
yeah,
From that point, we also take off in the evening, so a lot of the dogs and us are getting tired by that point. So
yeah.
into a couple of hours into the flight, the lights are turned off and we all have a snooze, and then by the time we might get to Dubai, we sort of get them up, and then we've got a toilet set up in the back area as well. So in the passenger toilet, we have sort of like puppy pads and artificial turf and things like that. So me as a chaperone, with the dogs that I have, every couple of hours I will take them to the back area just to see if they want to go. And of course they can have they have their water bowls at their seats throughout the flight, if they want to drink.
Yeah.
And if the owners want to bring some treats on board, they can. We do recommend not feeding full meals
Mm.
around 6 hours prior to flying, just to avoid motion sickness and upset tummies and things like that. And yeah, the process is surprisingly, yeah, calming for them, and they are, even though it's still sort of just under a 24-hour journey to Australia, they actually cope really well. And I think a lot of that is down to is that they're with people and they're with other dogs that are experiencing the same things, and there's nothing going on around them that's stressful for them.
Yeah.
There's no loud noises or darkness. They're not put in their crates or anything like that. Obviously when we get to Melbourne, they do go off to quarantine. So um And then yeah, it's the same coming back as well. We fly from private terminals from Melbourne. We use Melbourne jet base, and again it's the same thing. We just get into the lounge and then go. So it's a really calming process for them.
So that sounds so good. And if you ever need a chaperone, Aaron said he's happy to volunteer. He's like, that would be
Yeah.
my dream job to just
Yeah.
fly with pets
I
on
get surprisingly a lot of people emailing me
I
asking
can
for that job.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a dream job for animal lovers.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and then one thing, and this is more like for my personal question, really, but I'm sure
yeah.
I find it useful. When you land in Melbourne,
Yeah.
then I guess the dogs get put into their crates, and then are they picked up by someone from the quarantine facilities and taken there, or what happens at that end?
Yeah, yeah. So the dogs do have to be in their carriers upon landing in Melbourne. So before um, when we come into land, they're in their crates, and the cabin door opens. Usually, the process is border force will come on first. They will process all the passengers, check their passports. Then PEQ, which stands for post entry quarantine. They have a biosecurity team. They actually drive onto the tarmac where the private jet comes into. So they actually park right up alongside the jet.
Hmm.
They board the aircraft. They take the pets documentation. They take them off the aircraft, load them onto the vans, and then they take them to the facility. Now that process is really quick as well. They'll have all the pets off within 20 minutes, half an hour. They load them into the van and then they go to the facility, and sort of usually within 25 minutes and half an hour of them leaving the aircraft with all the pets, I will then get an email to say that all of the pets have been checked into the facility. So that side of it's really quick. And another benefit of flying, I guess, privately over flying cargo is that sometimes when they come in by cargo, they obviously have to be loaded off commercial aircrafts. They're then taken to the cargo terminal facility at Melbourne Airport, and then the quarantine staff pick them up from there. So there can be a bit of a delay in them in that happening, them being taken to the facility and then them getting picked up and taken to quarantine. So it's generally a lot quicker, again, a lot better for the snub nose breeds as well, because it means that they spend minimal time traveling in their crate to the facility, because they just gone and they just get there really quickly. So that's another massive positive to it.
And then if there is someone that's going on the flight with their pet, what's the experience like for the human? Because obviously
Mm.
we've spoken about the pets, but there will be people listening that
Yes.
will want to come on with their pets. So in terms of like the
Yeah.
flying experience, what's
Yeah.
that like for the human?
So in terms of, I guess, what you get on the aircraft, so you'll get your meals. So like depending on what time of the flights are, like your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and your snacks.
Yeah,
At a full drinks menu as well. So obviously you are flying privately, so there's that aspect of it.
yeah,
Again, you're flying from private terminals. You're flying into private terminals, so that whole
yeah,
experience is the same as for the pets as well. So
yeah,
it's quick, it's easy. The process is there's no long custom queues or anything like that. No waiting around. The baggage is taken from you as soon as you get to the lounge. It's put straight on the aircraft, and same when you land. Say you land in Melbourne or landed in London, when you get to the so it's different in Melbourne and London, sorry. So of course when we're landing in London, the pets don't have to go to quarantine, so it's a little bit of a different
mm,
setup. So we usually come into Farnborough Airport, which is just outside of London,
yeah,
which is a completely private airport. They actually the pet import officer will board the aircraft. They scan all of the dogs, check that the documentation matches to the pet, and then they can literally walk off. It's really easy. And then while that's happening, the luggage guys are also just taking all the luggage out of the back. They just place it in front of the aircraft. Whoever's picking you up, whether you've arranged a taxi, a family member, or a friend, they can actually pull right up alongside the aircraft as well to get you. So you'll literally come down the steps, and then you can pick your bags up and get straight into the car with the dog, and you're gone. So that process is just, yeah, completely unlike any other experience that you'll have. Even if you're flying first class, you don't get that experience. So obviously in Melbourne it's slightly different, because when you get there the dogs have to go into quarantine, although your family and friends can still come and meet you at the lounge and pick you up, but it's just a slightly different process. But again, really easy. There's also shower facilities that you can use at Farnborough and Melbourne airport, so if you just want to freshen up before you go on your onward journey, you can. So overall it's just, yeah, a lovely experience. And yeah, for humans and for pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your upcoming flights that you've got available this year?
So we're running a flight at the end of May this year. So we are going from London to Dubai. We're actually stopping in Singapore this time as well, and then we're going on to Melbourne. The London to Melbourne sector is actually sold out for May, but we have one space on the London to Dubai sector only for that route. On the way back, we have again Melbourne, Singapore, Dubai to London. We've still got a few spots left remaining on that sector. We then will have another UK Australia flight at the end of August. Tickets for that flight will actually become available in the next couple of weeks, so we're just preparing for that release. We will also be going on to New Zealand again with the end of August flight, whereas we won't be with May, but we'll do that at the end of August. We also are going to be releasing some US flights as well this year. So we're just going through the US Department of Transportation. There's a little bit more of a process.
So we're hoping to have Pepper on the August flight, because we are ideally hoping to be going by July. But obviously the difficult thing is knowing when our visa is going to come in.
Yeah, that's it.
So from there. So do you think, will there be any other flights in 2024? Are you planning, or will it be the
Yes, we are looking at another flight towards the end of 2024. So let me just think. Possibly maybe looking at the end of November. So we're gonna run on the basis of potentially every 3 or 4 months. And that will mostly depend on demand. So once we've finalised the May flight, and then we're opening the bookings for the August flight, sort of in the next few months, we'll then release another flight for the end of 2024 if there's demand for it. Otherwise, it might not be until the beginning of 2025. So it really just depends on. At the moment, I've got quite a lot of interest building up already for the end of August flight. So I think that will fill relatively quickly once it's released, which will then probably fuel us to add another flight on towards the end of 2024. We also will be releasing US flights later in the year. So we're just going through it's not an application process, sorry, it's just an approval process with the US Department of Transportation. We're hoping to have those flights bookable by next month. That route will involve Melbourne, Auckland, and Los Angeles, and then the opposite direction as well. So LA, Auckland, Melbourne. So it will just give an opportunity for those going to and from the US to also have the service. Yeah.
exciting?
Yeah. And also, sorry, I don't know if I mentioned adding Singapore into the mix as well. So if anyone wants to travel Melbourne to Singapore or vice versa, that will be an option. We also may have an option to and from Singapore from London as well. Although, like, our main focus is always going to be flights to and from Australia and New Zealand and connecting people with where, with us,
Yeah.
because we're an Australian company and that's what we want to focus on. So yeah, it's just really, I guess, also as demand grows as well, we might expand our routes in the future, but those are the routes that we're just going to be concentrating for now.
That's a lot of routes though.
Yeah, it is. And oh, sorry, I forgot most importantly, we've just announced a bi-monthly service between Australia and New Zealand. So we will be running flights every other month between just those two countries. And we'll alternate between Brisbane and Sydney for
Yeah.
now. So every other flight will be the different city, and then that will be going to and from Auckland. So it'll just give people the chance who are just going between those two countries. Also, Australia and New Zealand have got a quarantine-free agreement, so you can freely travel without the need for quarantine
Yeah.
on either end.
Cool. And then
Yeah.
what paperwork does someone need to have prepared in order to book the flight for their pet? Do they need to have gone through any of the sort of checks that need to be done, the vaccinations, etc., before they can reserve a spot?
Not necessarily. So it's dependent on, I guess, how far out we are. If we're less than 6 months out from a flight, I do prefer to speak to people who are going to book before they make the booking if they're flying London to Melbourne or any flight into Australia.
Yeah.
Just because, likely as you're aware, the process to get pets into the country, the time it takes around 6 to 7 months. So we do like to make sure the site flights sooner than that they've already got their rabies vaccination, they've already done their tiered test, and just make sure that they'll comply with the entry date. Then yeah, so we check all of that over.
Mhm.
Generally, before anyone books, we'll be having those conversations anyway. So if they haven't started the process, and say for example we've got the August flight coming up. Sorry, Daisy, one of my dogs is saying it's walk time. The We've got an import preparation package. So if someone hadn't started the process yet, we provide them with a guideline of everything they need to do, when they need to go to their vet appointments, what they need to ask for. So all the blood tests, all the vaccinations, the parasite treatments, all of that, we walk you through all of that process. We'll
Yeah.
also apply for the import permit, book the quarantine space, and that's
Yeah.
mainly focused around our flights and um, preparation for our flight dates.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got quite a few passengers that are on the May flight who are going through that process now. So we're just waiting for a few of the import permits to come back, and then we can book quarantine. And then it's just we walk you through that whole process. And the same when you're going back, or if you're relocating to the UK, we do all the export process. So arranging for the health certificate to be completed,
Yeah.
the export certificate, and all those things that need to be done before you leave the country, and also sending it to Farnborough Airport before you get there.
Yeah. So you can really offer a one-stop shop kind of service.
Yeah,
Obviously, would still
yeah,
need
that's it.
and the appointments and everything like that. But in terms of the official paperwork, if
Yeah,
people are booking with you, I think that makes it much easier as well, rather than having to deal with another agent for some parts of it. Uh,
yeah, that's
all in
it.
one, much easier,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah. And some people are already engaged with pet agents in the UK. So we also don't mind working alongside the agents. And there's quite a
it?
few agents in the UK that are just happy to support the passengers in that aspect, and they'll just carry on with that.
Yeah,
And then, if they want us to take over, we can. But if they just want to run through the whole thing, then yeah, we're happy with that as well, and we'll work with them.
And then finally, because we've given a lot of information, but obviously there is so much more that we could speak about,
Yeah.
where can people go to find out more information about your services, the flights, and how they can book?
Yeah, so they can visit our website. So it's skypettravel.com.au. Sky is spelt with an E, so just remember that. But we'll put the links in the bottom of this video anyway. So yeah, on the website we've got where we fly, when we're going to fly. If we haven't released flights yet, but they're on the website, you can join our wait list to be notified when they come out. We've also got a frequently asked questions page. We've got a page about imports and exports, about the import packages we offer to Australia and New Zealand, and just a little bit about our service and what we offer, and how we differ. I guess how our service is different from the traditional pet travel method.
Yeah, so I'll link everyone. I'll link the website in the show notes and the socials. Make sure you go and follow the socials because the content is so good, because you get to see all the you get to see all of the pets in the flight, and we love looking at the photos and people
Yeah.
tag you and things, and you get to see when the pets come out of quarantine. It's really nice. So make sure you follow the socials as well. But just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, because I know you're really busy. But second of all, thank you so much for setting the service up, because it's just
Thanks, Daisy.
incredible, and it's just given such a good option to us. And that peace of mind, I think, when we're trying to go through that process of transporting Pepper, it just makes it that little bit easier. So
Yeah,
yeah, I just want to say
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's been lovely. Thanks for having me on and letting me talk about Skye Pet Travel, the journey and how it started. I haven't had an opportunity to really do anything like this. I just haven't had the time. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, and to talk about it more on a personal level and actually show my face, and this is who I am behind the business. So yeah, it's been great. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. And we can't wait to see Pepper on board and get lots of
Yeah,
photos of her.
yeah, can't
But
wait.
yeah, thank you so much. And guys, if you have got any questions, and like I said, follow Joanne on socials, and there's also contact information on the website. And she's got so much information. So yeah, just reach out if you've got anything we haven't covered today.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Daisy. Appreciate it.
I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.